Now, why might we think that using drones or UAVs is a good idea? Well, here's one argument. Let's call it the argument for UAVs from combatant risk. The first premise of the argument is if one is able to fight a war in a way that significantly decreases the risks to one's own combatants, then you should do so. So the idea is, hey, suppose you have more than one way to fight a war. One way of doing it carries a high risk to the combatant. The other way carries a smaller risk to the combatant. Then you go with the smaller risk. Premise 2 is that UAVs are a way to fight a war that significantly decreases the risk to one's own combatants. So the idea is, hey, remote aerial vehicles, UAVs, their use reduces the risk to your combatants. And so the conclusion is UAVs should be used. Now, what motivates each of these premises? Well, let's start with premise 1. If one's able to fight in a war in a way that significantly decreases the risk to one's own combatants, then you should do so. Then one should do so. Here's the motivation for that. If your combatants are just, they're fighting the war in a just way, and so on, then they're not doing anything wrong. So they're not doing anything wrong, and when they're killed in war, their rights are violated. They have a right to life, even though they're combatants. And secondly, it seems bad to require people to engage in unnecessary risks. You've got two options for your soldiers. One risks their lives, the other lessens the risk. It just seems wrong to have them engage in an unnecessary risk. And states owe it to their combatants to minimize the risks they incur by fighting. These soldiers are doing this on behalf of the state, on behalf of the people of their country. Their risk should be minimized. Now, what about premise 2? What's the motivation for that? So again, thought is UAVs are a way to fight a war that significantly decreases the risks to one's own combatants. Well, it just seems kind of obvious and intuitive. When you got a UAV, the soldier's in a safe place somewhere far away from the action, sitting there with controls piloting the drone. Being in a faraway safe place is way less risky than being on a battlefield, and so premise 2 is true. So the idea is that we owe it to our soldiers to decrease the risk that they face in war. Drones are a way to do that, so we should adopt drones.